In all wars, it is children who suffer first and suffer most. Those are not my words. UNICEF wrote those words, and it's the children in Gaza who are living them. No child should live in a war zone, so why is it the reality for so many? Hello and welcome to Roundtable. I'm Enda Brady. For children in Gaza, war is nothing new, but the scale of the bombardments and displacement is unprecedented, and it will undoubtedly leave lasting scars.
A makeshift camp in Rafah. It's basic, and the tents don't offer much protection, but for many families, it's better than where they've come from.
كنا قاعدين في مدرسة الفرابة هناك في خان يونس، كانت حوالينا كل المدافع والدب، وكان الرصاص يطلع من فوقينا وننزل راسنا عشان ما يجيش في راسنا. كناش نعرف ننام أبداً، كنا نموت من السقعة، ما نقدرش نتحمل السقعة، كنا ننام على الأرض.
Hind is 14 years old. This is the third war she's experienced. She used to want to go to school and get good grades, but not anymore.
أحلام بطل فيه، طموح تكسر، أحلام ضاعت.
Before October 7th, this would not have been so far-fetched. 95.4% of children in Palestine were registered in basic education before the war. And that is a lot of kids. In Gaza, nearly half the population is under 18. But their schools are not safe. Many have been destroyed by Israeli bombs in contravention of international law. And the impact will be long-lasting. UNICEF has warned the cost to children and their communities of this violence will be borne out for generations to come. That is, of course, if these children are allowed to grow up.
أشوف أطفال كتير ماتوا هم نايمين وأنا خايفة يجي الدور علي وأموت.
Well, let's meet our guests. In Tunis is Francesca Albanese, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the human rights situation in the occupied Palestinian territory. In Amman is Ahmed Bayram, Regional Media Advisor for the Norwegian Refugee Council. And here with me in the studio is Dr. Omar Abdel Manan, a paediatric neurologist and founder of Gaza Medic Voices. Francesca, I'll come to you first. We've been seeing appalling images on our TV screens now for months, every single day. Just give us your impression of the reality on the ground, what it's like for the children of Gaza.
Thank you. I think it's really difficult because I'm not there with my feet on the ground. But I hear what UN colleagues and others are saying, and I see the horrific images that manage to pass to get to us from Gaza, and I cannot compare with anything else I've seen. Not only because it's happening under our eyes, the international community has the power to stop it, and it doesn't. But also because I believe that what we get is a microscopic representation of the reality on the ground, because there are so many blind spots at the moment in Gaza where everything has collapsed. Over 60% of the civilian infrastructure has been destroyed. Up to now, only 9 of the 29 hospitals who existed in Gaza are still there, and they are pretty dysfunctional because they are overloaded with patients, with refugees, and without the much needed medical equipment, while at the time also diseases are spreading. There have been almost 20,000 people killed. 8,000 of them are children, and there are almost 50,000 people injured. So when you ask the people in Gaza, to give you a measure of how apocalyptic the situation is, when you ask people in Gaza who are starving, who are thirsty, who have not had the basic things that human life commands, what do you need? They ask anesthetics, because it's terrible to have to amputate people without anesthetics. You realize the drama that has been and the tragedy that has befallen the Gaza Strip.
Francesca, you mentioned the international community. They had an opportunity to vote in favour of a ceasefire, and they did. Some countries, like the United Kingdom, abstained on the vote. Other countries directly voted against it, looking at Austria, Czech Republic, Guatemala, Liberia, Papua New Guinea, Paraguay, the United States. How does that make you feel, seeing the list of countries around the world who have seen what has been happening to the children of Gaza and decided that we'll vote against having a ceasefire?
It makes me feel appalled as a UN independent expert, as a lawyer, and as a human being. I cannot explain what prompts these people to abstain or vote against a resolution which would just lead to the stop of bombing, to halt the bombing, which is the only thing, the only hope we have to save further loss of innocent life. There is nothing else that has been gained through this bombing, because there is no evidence that Hamas has been incapacitated, that Hamas's military capacity has been halted. If only one thing we can learn from the past, that this brutalization of the people, wherever they are, further radicalizes them. And it's not just about the Palestinian. This is a reality that is documented elsewhere. So I really think that the political myopia is the main characteristic of this time.
Ahmed, Francesca used the word there, apocalyptic. I mean, that is the only word for what we're witnessing here when it comes to the children of Gaza, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, they're just imagine if, just think of the legacy and the future that we are giving these children. In our programs, we do a lot of programs that target healing and target emotional support for children. Usually we rely on parents and we rely on relatives to help us with that. We rely on teachers to help us with that, to help these children recover. Before this conflict, to give you an example, we were working with children for years to overcome what happened 10 years ago almost, in the 2014 and then the 2021 and everything between them. These children, were yet to recover from those events, from that conflict, which doesn't even compare to what is happening now. The legacy that we are leaving, these children without limbs, without parents, without a home, without siblings. I think we haven't even seen, everything that we see now is going to be the tip of the iceberg of what is going to come when it comes to, the situation of children who have, obviously sustained physical injuries, mental injuries, psychological injuries. Some of the children, my colleagues tell me, don't even know what is going on until now. If you are 2 or 3 years old, you barely know what's going on, even if someone explains to you. We have had colleagues telling us that babies refuse to have milk. These little stories here and there, I mean, we don't see them every day on screen because of course, all we see is more deaths, more children in hospital corridors, more children being killed and maimed. But behind these screens and behind the cameras, there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of children who are suffering every minute of every day. Children now, there's no one full night of sleep anymore. There's no such thing. There's no one full day of healthy meals or even just meals.
Omar, you've been to Gaza 5 times with your work. Just give us a picture of your experience there.
Thank you so much. So I have been 5 times into Gaza to teach and train junior doctors. So I have not been involved in direct medical aid inside Gaza, but I have many colleagues who have. And we've been in constant communication with the doctors, the healthcare workers inside Gaza since probably the 10th of October when they started reaching out with what was happening. And frankly, as a pediatrician who looks after children, as a father, as a human being, I am absolutely disgusted at what I'm seeing on the screen. The pictures and the videos of children being executed in an UNRWA school the pictures of babies, premature babies coming out of the incubator, being put together like mice with foil to keep them alive. The pictures and the videos of children having their legs amputated with little to no pain control, no morphine, no tramadol, nothing to keep them from wailing. These pictures horrify me and they make me feel sick to the stomach. And as a healthcare community, we are appalled by what we are seeing. And Francesca mentioned, and she's absolutely right, there is political myopia. There is actually political blindness. This is frankly blindness as to the horrors that we are seeing. Half of the population of Gaza is under the age of 18. And when we hear the World Food Bank say that 90% of people are not having one meal a day, that equates to 900,000 children every day not being able to eat. And if you break that down, you're talking about toddlers, infants, babies who are not getting their milk, who are not getting their nutrition. So forget the bombing, and the bombing is horrific, but think about the effects after that. Malnutrition has devastating effects acutely and chronically on these children, on this population. This will be a lost generation of wounded children with no surviving family. These children who would have no one literally to look after them when the dust settles and when the day after the ceasefire comes. And the ones that will be so malnutritioned that they will have detrimental effects long-term in terms of their livelihoods, their cognition, their ability to study, be educated, live a normal life. We as an international community have failed these people. We have failed them on an apocalyptic level that has not been seen since the Second World War. In this conflict, 4,000 children died in the first month of this conflict. Do you know how many children died in Syria or Yemen in the same period of time?
I don't.
350 maximum. So we're talking about a tenfold increase in the targeting and systematic targeting of a civilian population by, frankly, what I would deem, and what I think many are deeming now, a state that is controlled by essentially, a terrorist state. This is essentially what we are seeing. I mean, I cannot...
The Israelis say they're going into Gaza to get rid of terrorists.
And frankly, I am sick and tired of being asked to condemn Hamas when I'm seeing what they are actually doing. Show me the evidence that Hamas executed children at point blank inside a UN school. Show me that evidence, because that is what we are seeing now. And the world is turning a blind eye.
Can I just ask, on that point, the world turning a blind eye, how do you feel as a medic from the United Kingdom knowing that this country abstained on a vote for a ceasefire?
I feel appalled. I feel disgusted. I feel shameful to be British in many ways, to hold that passport, because I look at it, and actually I think abstaining from the vote was a very sinister move, because the UK paved the way by abstaining for the US to then decide that, they could vote against a ceasefire. Had the UK taken the moral high ground and decided that, like other countries, Ireland included, and many others, decided to have some courage, some respectability to say that we condone what is happening, there should be a full and lasting ceasefire, America would have been in a very difficult position. And currently, this list of countries that you've provided, these are pariah states. These are, frankly, pariah states in my eyes. And I'm no legal expert, but for me, I cannot think of any other word to describe them, because they are condoning what the UN has described, when many have described as potentially a genocide. And if this is not a genocide, then please show me an example of what else is a genocide.
Thank you, Omar. Francesca, Omar mentioned the destruction of schools. Can we talk about education in the future? So many schools have been obliterated by Israel's war machine. What chance do the children of Gaza stand going forward when this is all over? What chance do any of them stand if they can even get nourishment and get food? The chances of an education in Gaza?
Look, I don't want to speak and speculate, give my opinions beyond my expertise. So I don't have the capacity to answer this question, even to the best of my knowledge. What I'm very, very concerned about right now is the survival of people, before thinking what kind of education they can have, what kind of life they can have, where are they going to find a roof on their head again, adequate conditions of living. But my fear right now is for mere survival. Because, as it has been said, the situation in Gaza was already quite desperate, in fact, before the 7th of October. There were many people, because of the limits on importation imposed on the Gaza Strip, there were already people living on the brink of mere survival. But the thing is that depriving the people in Gaza of food, water, fuel, electricity, medication, at the time the Gaza Strip has been wildly, fiercely bombed, it's something that has endangered their survival, destroying the health infrastructure and preventing hospitals to have the bare minimum to also cure preventable diseases. There were cancer patients, there were people with long-term diseases who cannot be treated. How many of them will die because of lack of medicines? How many of them will die because of starvation? How many of them will die because of the diseases which are spreading in the Gaza Strip? This is what concerns me the most, because this is the emergency now.
Ahmed, can I ask you, there's clips that went viral of adults writing in marker pen children's names on their arms, that if the worst came to the worst and they were found in rubble and they were dead, that they could be identified. How on earth have we got to a situation that this is deemed acceptable by some nations?
I think what's happening in Gaza, and obviously all guests have alluded to that already, is a sudden drop, in our human standards, really, in our humanitarian standards. Everything has become almost acceptable in what's happening in Gaza. The loss of lives, the loss of civilian, obviously, homes, infrastructure, damage to that, and damage to the entire humanitarian system in Gaza that is collapsing by the hour, and at the same time, of course, with the services that almost don't exist anymore. I think what happened there is that the politicization of the Gaza story, and the obviously the disappointment that we have seen from the entire humanitarian aid community of the political course of the political discourse of what's happening, has turned this into a game of us catching up with these casualties, with this suffering almost on a daily basis. Try to put a word out, try to tell these world leaders who talk the talk and who tell us that they do sympathize with us, with our aid workers who are now being pushed into these pockets of space, being forced to only give aid in confined spaces, in overcrowded shelters, when people in northern Gaza, for example, can never get hold of a bottle of water or a hot meal or whatever that is. I think that drop in standards, and it's almost like politics has overtaken the whole space in areas and in crises that I have worked on. For example, in Syria, I was there in Iraq during the Mosul offensive. Obviously, in Gaza, in past events, we almost had a room for our aid teams to operate, to be able to operate in that shrinking space. And we always had the guarantees to be able to move around and provide aid for those people in camps and obviously in displacement areas.
Thanks, Ahmed. Omar, many people around the world will be watching this, feeling helpless. What can they be doing to help? Which charities can people donate to?
So I think, as Ahmed alluded to, I would say before you start donating to charities and before you start sending money to Gaza, because actually Gaza will not be short of money. It will not be short of donations. There are already millions out there. We've seen them in the streets of London. We've seen them in every city standing up and saying enough is enough. So I actually think the current need from all of us within every sector of society is to mobilize. And what that means is we need, as a collective voice of human beings, whether we are doctors, engineers, lawyers, whatever we do, whatever our walk of life, we need to look at the situation and look at our children and our future generations and think, what message do we want to send to them? What do we want those children to look back and think of us and what we did or we did not do at this point of time? And that means applying pressure on our governments. That means going on demonstrations. That means pressurizing, writing to our MPs in the UK, writing to our members of parliament in other countries. That means speaking up at work, being able to talk and have a conversation with your colleague about, the lack of humanity that we are seeing. And there are so many voices that are being silenced. There are so many voices that are scared and fearful. Within my community, the healthcare workers.
Why are they scared?
I have medical students who tell me that they are being told that they would be anti-Semitic if they called for a ceasefire. That is my message. In terms of donating and helping on the ground, there are many organizations, the Palestinian Red Crescent, Medical Aid to Palestinians. Many of these charities are doing excellent work, trying to send in teams, trying to send in supplies and aid, and trying to help. And that will be crucial for the day after the ceasefire comes, which will come at some point. And we need to be, as a collective community, mobilized and ready to provide whatever aid we can, and on a global scale, to be able to rebuild Gaza, because that is what is needed.
Francesca, can I just ask you, looking ahead, what level of mental health support should the children of Gaza be getting after this apocalyptic ordeal that they've lived through, the ones who are lucky enough to still be alive? I mean, they obviously won't get that level of support, but in the Western world, what would be needed for them?
Well, I want to hope that they will get that help. I want to hope that the international community that now is silent or it's not taking a principled stand in defense of really the civilian victims of this conflict. Nothing of what I'm saying should be read at the detriment of the Israeli civilians. But again, I don't see the same level of empathy, of connection with the Palestinians. We keep on talking of the innocent civilians that have been killed or brutalized in Israel, and rightly so. That's fine. But what about the innocent civilians that have been killed and brutalized in Palestine as of the 7th of October and before? So, before, as you asked about children, before the 7th of October, 80% of the children in Gaza, which constitute half of the population, and 40% of the population of Gaza is not even 15. So 80% of them were displaying depression symptoms. 80%. It's huge. And already in Gaza, there was a lack of adequate psychosocial support. So now I hope that in the day after, as soon as the hostility stops, and my wish is that this happens tomorrow, if not today, there will be adequate support both to children and their parents, because everyone is hugely traumatized. I mean, eventually they will need to be part of a society that nurtures them and welcomes them. How to make it happen if they are so broken in their spirits, in their soul, with all this horror, how they will ever recover. So this is why I'm saying there should be a serious responsibility taken by the international community.
Francesca, just one point I want to make. When Russia went to war with Ukraine, there was a huge push to help children in Ukraine. Many families in Britain took families in, helped the children of Ukraine. We just haven't seen that with Gaza, have we? I mean, there just hasn't been that want of a need to reach out and help. Why do you think that is?
Do you want the short or the long? Look, there is one fact that 100 years of colonization have left a huge imprint, as someone say, on our consciousness, on our DNA in Europe, first and foremost, but most of the West, which of this colonial enterprise is the offspring. So I think we still have a difficulty to relate to the other, regardless of the color of the skin, the race, the nationality, the ethnicity, the religion. And this is why I think that the way, for example, Ukrainian refugees have been treated is perfect, and everyone should be treated this way. But again, it doesn't happen because of discrimination that is rooted in racism.
Francesca, Ahmed, and Omar, that's all we have time for. Remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Search for Roundtable TRT World. But for now, from me and Brady and all of the team here, goodbye and thank you for watching.